Hi, Fuller Falcons. It's Mrs. Leister again. I'm a little limited on books that I have at home because they're all at school. So you get to hear one that I've had tucked away for a while now. It's from my childhood, and I also read it to Gavin when he was little. It's one of my favorites, and you can tell that it's been a little extra loved. So I'm excited to share it with you. This is called How to Scare a Lion. It's by Dorothy Stevenson, illustrated by John E. Johnson. In all the world, Leonard was the fiercest of all lions, and fearless Frederick was the bravest of all lion tamers. They were the greatest act in the greatest show on earth. Wherever the circus traveled, people came from miles around to see Frederick and Leonard perform in the center ring. They came to see Leonard balance on a barrel, dance to a waltz, and jump through a flaming hoop. But most of all, they came to see Frederick put his head into Leonard's mouth. No wonder they called Frederick fearless. After this trick, Leonard would roar his loudest, Frederick would bow his lowest, and the people would shout, "Hooray, hooray!" Leonard and Frederick loved working in the circus. They loved the crowds and the children and the cheers. Leonard especially loved the cotton candy. Eating cotton candy always gave Leonard a pink mustache. And one day it gave him something else too. It gave him the hiccups. Hiccup! Bang! Now, fearless Frederick was not afraid of lions or tigers or leopards, but he was afraid of Leonard's hiccups. Whenever a hiccup came along, Leonard's jaws closed with a loud bang. Frederick was afraid that one of Leonard's hiccups might chop off his head. Something had to be done. Frederick frowned and said sternly, "Don't just hiccup, Leonard. Do something." So Leonard did. He held his breath until he was blue. He drank water until he was filled to the very brim, and he stood on his head until he was dizzy. But Leonard's hiccups kept coming. Blue hiccups, wet hiccups, even upside down hiccups. Then Leonard blew up balloons until he was out of breath. The balloons bounced all around. Leonard was hiccuping better than ever. Frederick knew that a really good scare was a sure cure for the hiccups. But, thought Frederick, how do you scare a lion? He decided to ask his friend Calvin the human cannonball. Calvin said, "Perhaps being shot out of a cannon will scare a lion." So Frederick and Leonard climbed into Calvin's big cannon. As they climbed farther and farther and farther inside, it got darker and darker and darker. "Leonard," said Frederick, "I don't think I like this way of scaring you." They could hear Calvin counting, 3, 2, 1, 0, fire! The cannon exploded with a booming bang. Frederick and Leonard shot through the air faster and faster and faster until they bounced into a big net. When they stopped bouncing, Frederick asked, "Wasn't that scary, Leonard?" Leonard answered loudly, "Hiccup!" "Oh, Leonard," said Frederick, "if being shot out of a cannon won't scare a lion, what will?" Frederick decided to ask his friend Walter the wire walker. Walter said, Perhaps a walk across the high wire will scare a lion. So Frederick took Leonard up the tall ladder leading to the high wire that stretched across the top of the tent. They climbed higher and higher and higher. Frederick looked down. The ring was far below. Frederick felt dizzy. "Leonard," said Frederick, "I don't think I like this way of scaring you either." When they reached the top of the ladder, Frederick climbed onto Leonard's back. He held on tight to Leonard's mane. Leonard started out across the wire, first one paw and then the other. Each time Leonard hiccuped, he bounced up and down on the wire, up and down, so that half of the time they weren't on the wire at all. When they reached the ladder on the other side, Frederick asked, "Wasn't that scary, Leonard?" Leonard started to answer, but at that very moment a hiccup came along that was so big it made the ladder shake, and it made Frederick shake too. Frederick was glad to get down on the ground again. He said, "That was a very big hiccup, Leonard. You're going to need a very big scare." So Frederick and Leonard went to see Eloise, the biggest elephant in the circus. Eloise did a very special trick with Mr. Elmer, her trainer. First, Mr. Elmer would lie down on the ground, then Eloise would lower her foot until it was so close to Mr. Elmer that she seemed to be standing on him. Eloise had to be very careful not to come too close, just close enough to give everyone a big scare. Frederick asked Eloise to scare Leonard. Eloise liked to scare people, and she thought she would like to scare a lion too. Frederick was worried. Eloise looked even bigger from underneath. Suppose she forgot to be careful. "Leonard," said Frederick, "I don't think I like this way of scaring you at all." Frederick and Leonard lay down on the ground. Eloise lowered her foot closer and closer and closer. Frederick closed his eyes. He didn't want to look, but Leonard kept his eyes open. He had never seen the bottom of an elephant's foot before. It was big and round, and Eloise's foot was so close it tickled Leonard's whiskers. Suddenly, Leonard hiccuped the loudest hiccup ever. Hiccup! It was so loud that Eloise forgot all about scaring Leonard. She trumpeted loudly and ran for her life. "Come back, Eloise, come back!" shouted Frederick. But Eloise kept running farther and farther and farther away from Leonard and his giant hiccups. "Leonard," said Frederick, "I'm afraid that was a good way to scare an elephant, but a bad way to scare a lion." Frederick was really getting worried. Oh, what could possibly scare a lion? Frederick thought and thought, but he couldn't think of anything scary enough. Then Frederick decided to ask all his friends to help him think. He asked all the circus performers to come to a meeting in the big tent. When everyone was there, Frederick asked them, "What is the scariest thing in the whole world? What is scary enough to scare Leonard?" Everyone started thinking. For a long time, everyone was silent. Everyone but Leonard anyone. He kept saying, "Hiccup!" At last, Cookie the Clown said, "I'm sorry, Frederick, but I can't think of anything that scary." The other performers shook their heads sadly. There was no use thinking anymore. There was just nothing in the whole world scary enough to scare Leonard. It was almost showtime. A great crowd had gathered in the big tent. They had come to see the greatest show on earth, especially fearless Frederick, the bravest of all lion tamers. But Frederick wasn't fearless anymore. He was afraid of losing his head, and all on account of a hiccup. Frederick and Leonard walked slowly toward the big tent. Every 3 steps they stopped for Leonard to go, hiccup, and for Frederick to sigh and shake his head sadly. All the circus performers were busy getting ready for the show. Frederick and Leonard stopped to watch Cookie put on his clown clothes. Cookie put on his funny long shoes and his funny long tie. Then he looked in his big mirror and put on his funny long nose. Now he was ready for the show. Cookie made a few funny faces to try to cheer up Frederick, but it was no use. Frederick was too sad to be cheery. Suddenly there was a loud roar from Leonard. "Leonard!" shouted Frederick. "What's wrong?" Poor Leonard! He was shivering, he was shuddering, he was shaking. Then Frederick saw what Leonard saw. Leonard was looking at himself in Cookie's big mirror. "Hooray!" shouted Frederick. "Hooray!" Leonard had the shivers and the shudders and the shakes, but he didn't have the hiccups. Not anymore. Leonard had found out for himself how to scare a lion. So a lion scares a lion. The end. Thanks for listening. There's a little circus tent. Have a good day. Bye.